Hey, everybody, it's the Combatcast with a man called Dave, Chevy, and we are going to talk about a big week we just had in combat sports, along with some MMA Mount Rushmore for heavyweights. And hey, please, if you've checked us out before and you like us, why don't you give us a subscribe? Other than that, Chevy, let's get down to business. Tell people what we got coming up after this week.
All right, September 27th, UFC Fight Night, Olberg versus Reyes. That's 10 p.m. from Perth, Australia. And then October 4th, UFC 320, Ankalaev versus Pereira 2. That's a 10 p.m. Vegas pay-per-view. And then October 11th, UFC Fight Night, Alvarez versus Fiziev. That's a fun lightweight matchup. That's 7 p.m. from Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah, that kind of snuck up on me. That should be fireworks right there. Big step up for Fiziev, and good luck to him in that fight. Jesus.
Yeah, tough. Although, Oliveira's only getting older, I guess. I don't know. We'll see.
So, all right, let's get to it. We'll start off. Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Crawford. That happened this past weekend. Chevy did not get to check this out. I did. And I'll tell you first off what I didn't like. Okay, I got home. I was out late, and I got home late. So I was like, well, I'm gonna go check out the fight. I hope it didn't start already. Because we're trying to improve the pace on things. Well, that fight did not start, and it was about midnight, and I gave up. Now, luckily, Netflix. I just woke up. I avoided spoilers. I immediately turned it on before I left it off, and I watched the fight next day in the morning. So, having to do that after a fresh night's sleep, it was a good fight. I enjoyed the fight. Crawford, faster, really seemed to beat Canelo to the punch, and the size difference did not really come into play at all. Canelo, at times, did get some clean shots off, which is great because we saw that wasn't really going to affect Crawford at all. So just an outstanding performance. I think somebody had said, like, there's probably, maybe it was Max Kellerman, but there wasn't a time where you could really think about where somebody's almost felt like their entire legacy depended on one fight. Like, Crawford was going to be who he was, but if he didn't win this fight, he was always going to be considered down. But winning this one fight immediately now has elevated him in history in the talks of Sugar Ray Robinson and many greats of boxing. And, yeah, I got to say, I don't know where he would go from here.
Got to do a rematch, obviously, right? Canelo deserves a rematch.
A shit ton of money, which I think that's probably, what they'll end up doing. But I'm just saying in terms of, like, other opponents out there for him, I don't see Crawford wanting to step up any more weight class. Because I know somebody mentioned David Benavidez for him at one point, who Canelo was actively trying to avoid. And Crawford flat out said, he's way too big.
Yeah, cause I think Benavidez went up another weight class. Yeah. So it's like he's he's way too big. That'd be a bad idea. Also, Crawford's 38. Right. He made I'm sure he made a good chunk of money from this fight, and then he'll probably make fucking 10 times as much in the rematch. Because now he holds all the titles. So
yeah. Only thing I want to say is I hope that we got to work on the pacing of this boxing event still. We didn't get there. Production-wise, things were great from what I saw. Heard nothing but good things, even the stuff I didn't see in terms of that. Fight was good, awesome. Glad that it's on a streaming channel and it's a little more accessible. But let's get the fighters out here. Is it too much to even ask by 11:30? I
thought Dana was going to take care of that. Didn't he specifically say that?
He did. He said that was one of the things, yeah.
He said no podcast link to things in between, and instead I heard Tool came out and played.
Right.
We don't need a concert. Like, you already have drawn the people in. Like, they're there to watch the fight. Fucking put the fighters out there in the ring to fight.
I would say, looking at it is he made some promises he probably couldn't deliver on, because in all honesty, even though I know people are talking about TKO boxing and everything like this wasn't really TKO boxing. He was just able to put his name on it. So you really probably didn't have
Turkey show. It's the Turkey show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but hey, all right. You know what? overall, though, big thing was good for Terrence Crawford. So good for him. Glad to hear it. One of the best in boxing and one of the guys I enjoy going on my way to watch fight. But that wasn't the only combat sports we had, because we had UFC Noche, Diego Lopes versus Jean Silva. And Chevy, I got to see this fight. This was fireworks. But before we get to that, any other fights you want to bring up on this card?
Yeah, we talked about on the prelims Siddiqus Dumas versus Zachary Reese. We talked about Dumas having some financial issues. He posted a picture of his bank account. He had like $13 or something. And then 51 seconds into the fight, he gets kicked in the groin bad. And he was not able to continue. He couldn't even get up like to his knees, really. Like the doctor had to come in. They basically used all the time, but it's been a long time since I've seen a groin shot specifically where the guy couldn't continue. So hopefully, I don't know how his contract is structured, but he'll get show money at least, but hopefully he can stretch that to his next fight. And then obviously bummer for Zachary Reese. Did all this work. He has a great story, and then he gets in there and fouls the guy unintentionally, and he can't get a win bonus either. So bummer for them. Tatiana Suarez got a decision over Amanda Lemos. That was a high level match, but wasn't super exciting. Suarez just kind of wrestled her to a decision. But Alexander Hernandez versus Diego Ferreira. Hernandez got a TKO in round 2. This is his 3rd straight finish and 5th straight win overall. So he's really gotten his career back on track. He's looking great.
Yeah, he's got to start it off fast too, and then had some trouble. So to see him come back now, good for him.
Yep. And then on the undercard, we got to talk about Kelvin Gastelum versus Dustin Stoltzfus. Gastelum. Yeah. Gastelum won a decision, right? But that's not the story of this fight. He missed weight by 5 pounds. And he has missed weight 4 times in the UFC. I did a little research here. Nico Masoke, he was 1 3/4 pounds over, right? Then the next year, he went to fight Tyron Woodley, 9 pounds over. That was UFC 205. Huge card, if you remember.
Yep.
Missed. I think he ended up losing on there. But and then he went to fight Cowboy, and he was 10. We believe 10 pounds over.
Wow.
But he was so heavy that they didn't even let him weigh in. And they just canceled the fight. So and then he was 5 pounds over for this fight versus Dustin. So very unprofessional. Obviously our group, big fan of Kevin Gastelum. Yeah. He has the skills. He has a legendary chin, great hands, great takedown defense. He just lacks discipline because he really, he could be a world champion at welterweight probably if he had the discipline to make weight. This was a middleweight fight that he missed for 5 pounds also. So
I saw Mike Doce post a comment I was seeing on the scale, and he said, I have nothing but love for Kelvin. We worked together for a while, but when I look at him, I'm nothing but sad because I feel like I should be looking at a 3 weight class world champion right here.
Yeah, it is the most, just the potential of Kelvin Gastelum not being seen is so disappointing and sad. So
he could get let go at this point. Only because they like him, but he's not that big a deal to them, and he's basically had a career of missing weight at this point.
And I'm sure he makes a lot of money now. So, he did give up 35% of his purse to Dustin, which is good for him because, he makes a lot of money. But it doesn't matter because, he lost. So he's taking a big L there. Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know. It just makes me upset. Hopefully Kelvin can get it together, but it's been over 10 years of him missing weight at this point, 15 years in the UFC or something. Why would he change now? So,
yeah.
All right, let's move on. Co-main event here was supposed to be Rob Font versus Raul Rojas Jr., right?
Yep.
But Rojas Jr. had an injury, and David Martinez, another Mexican prospect, steps in.
He did.
And he gets a decision win over Rob Font.
Yeah, I was impressed. It's funny. It was hard to really, with everything going on with this weekend, with an exciting main event I watched, and then the boxing. This fight kind of fell through the cracks. But one thing that really stuck out for me, and I'll let you break the fight down, but was like the comfortability of David Martinez in this co-main event. Just fighting like throwing hand. Like I was like, oh man, like this guy's got no intimidation of being in this co-main event spot with a guy like Rob Font. Like he's absolutely comfortable. I was like, good for him.
He's a doctor too. I don't know if you saw that. He's a doctor, so like clearly, being under pressure,
nothing new there.
He's used to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I was just gonna say I'll throw out like I like to do once in a while. Future opponents. I figured I see there's a few bantamweight key matchups with guys ranked that are coming up. One guy I did not see with a fight yet, although I could have missed, was Davidson Figueiredo. Possibly open at bantamweight. He's got a name. He's a little more well-rounded, I think, than Rob Font, since he's going on the ground. I would not make that matchup for me.
Yeah, that's a fun fight for sure. But Martinez showed he can go to deep water because he went all 3 rounds. And he did struggle at some points. He slowed down in that second round. But he clearly belongs in the rankings there. This is only his second UFC fight, and he's going to be a ranked fighter now. So good for him. But, obviously it's just a couple fights, so he's got a long way to go before we can really assess where he's, going to end up at. But for Rob Font, he looked pretty good, but I think he's just lost a step, and people have figured out his game. And, he's probably got 1 or 2 more fights maybe, and then time to retire. He's definitely getting older for sure.
He's a career contender. He's been in that middle of the pack, maybe even close to top 5 at different times. But as the MMA landscape keeps evolving, especially at that weight class, especially bantamweight's just so good. Unless there's going to be some kind of physical change with this guy, I would say fighting him at UFC, I don't see where he goes from here. You definitely have to do some reevaluating. It's not that he's not good. It's just that division is so elite. So where do you want to go?
He's got great boxing skills, massive hands for bantamweight or whatever. And, maybe he goes over to bare knuckle or something. Maybe I bet they would pay him pretty well over there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about this main event here. Diego Lopes versus John Silva.
Fireworks. Absolutely fun fight. Diego getting the better of Silva, but Silva having some moments here, and Diego really just showing that chin. Actually, I was going to read the bonuses out here because performance of the night, Santiago Luna, but also Diego Lopes. And fight of the night was Diego Lopes on Silva. So Diego Lopes got 2 bonuses for this. Great way to bounce back after losing in that title matchup with Volk. And to see him bounce back in this way, UFC Noche, super cool. I can't say, it's funny. It was a good performance. I thought Silva was going to pull it off here. But, going into the fight, not watching it, I didn't feel that way. But although he had his moments. But I just thought, watching it, I thought, I don't know if Diego's still better than what he was before, though. He was always this good. It's you know what I mean? I'm curious to see where we go for it here. I'd like to see him in there with Yair Rodriguez next. And
they have heat too.
Yeah,
I think that actually should have been what this Noche.
That would,
because absolutely. Lopez trains in Mexico. Yair, the face of Mexican MMA. That's what should have happened, but Yair does what he wants.
And I'll let you break down the fight a little more, but I'd like to see that fight. And the only other question I have, just because I know Silva was protesting at one point, did you think the stoppage was a little early? I didn't have a problem with it. He was getting battered, but I did see Silva was up, too. So what did you think of the stoppage?
A little early, but I don't think it was gonna make too much of a difference. You know, yeah, he got up immediately, but it, no, I thought the stoppage was okay. A little bit early, but he didn't get robbed at all. So, back to the beginning though. Lopes took him down early, dominated him on the ground, like had him in mount for most of the first round. And I actually thought that the fight was going to get stopped a couple times. I think it was very close. Luckily, Silva didn't really turtle up. And I mean, he did turtle up a couple times, and that's when those 12-6 elbows came down and cracked his head open. But he didn't accept position and cover up. He was always trying to escape. And I think that's kind of how he was able to avoid the fight being stopped. And then in round 2, he came out super aggressive. He was looking really good. But in his typical fashion, he just got over aggressive and fell forward into a spinning elbow, which obviously put him down and cut his head open more. And then Lopes jumped on him quick with the follow-up. So, yeah, they had some heat afterwards or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But, we know how intense Jean Silva can be. I wonder if taking a loss now, well, maybe he can rein that in a little bit. Fighting nerds, falling on hard times, big fan of them. Yeah. But that's a lot of losses for them in a short amount of time. So, they have some stuff to work on. Still great camp, obviously, but they're at that top level now. So time to dial it in. You can't rely on just aggression. It was not a very good game plan from Silva. He was just trying to go in there and just fight. Wasn't very disciplined. So, those are the kinds of things you have to do if you want to be a champion in the UFC. So I'm sure that he'll get with the team and they'll talk about that, and hopefully they'll make adjustments.
Absolutely. I like Silva. So hopefully we'll see more of him in the future. I'm sure we will. Big fights come in. All right, let's get to our final segment of the day. The Mount Rushmore, not of the presidents, we're not going to do that, but of MMA heavyweights. And interesting for me, I'll tell you my list, and I'll let you, we'll talk about it. What I thought, two things are interesting to me when I spent up on MMA heavyweights. One, it's the only list where one of my top guys is never fought in the UFC. And another guy on my list currently fights for another organization too. So we'll see. And the other thing I thought was interesting was that, I like to sometimes look to see what people have for their own list and stuff like that, like what the top list is. And I couldn't help but notice like John Jones was in one of the first names for heavyweight. But to me, look, John Jones, greatest fighter of all time. Yeah, I mean, you could talk Habib and some other guys in there, but sure. Greatest light heavyweight of all time. Without question, I think he has that resume. But he hasn't fought that many times at heavyweight. Although heavyweight, when you get beyond the 4 we're going to talk about today, it does get a little bit not as deep, and you could definitely say if he kept fighting or, if he did fight Tom and won that fight, I might have a different list today, but I don't. So, and the other thing that was interesting to me when I was thinking about John, and John Jones fans will hate me for this, but I'm serious as hell when I say this. I think Daniel Cormier has a better heavyweight resume because he fought more at heavyweight. And I would probably rank him above John, even though not like if all-time fighter, John, but just heavyweights, I feel like I give it to DC a little.
Right. Looking at the work, you have to look at who they fought. Right. And John just hasn't. I mean, Cyril Gane is Cyril Gane. And he fought Stipe, who is,
way past
up there, but just way, way past his prime. He was off for years and.
Right.
Yeah.
But I will use that's the Stipe will put some holes in some logic here for me, but I will because I'm going to have Stipe on my list and a lot of other people. So let me start off with my fourth guy, which was Cain Velasquez. I'm going to rank him too. Cain is awesome heavyweight. Beat Brock Lesnar up, 2-time champ, really dominant, amazing cardio. Injury kind of plagued Cain. But when you look at Cain's career, he was the most dominant heavyweight for that time. Unfortunately, there wasn't a ton of domination in UFC heavyweights. I think Kane had like 2 title defenses in his first reign, and then again on his second reign, and then but yeah, I had to put Kane in at my number 4 spot. I just felt like he had enough of a resume that he should be on that list. Number 3, I went with Stipe because Stipe. I don't know if there's been a guy in the UFC in more heavyweight title fights than Stipe. When you think about, multiple time champ, defeated Cormier, those title fights, the one with Jones, he just lost. So I felt like Stipe was the guy. If Cormier had won that fight when they fought, that last time, I think Cormier would have been the guy. But Stipe was, and so he's got my number.
I think Stipe had the most title defenses.
Defenses,
right? For UFC heavyweight. Yeah.
He's definitely. I mean, if he had 3, because he's a multiple time champ too, and then you think about time lost it to Francis, and then came back with Jones. He's been in a lot of championship fights. So that was Stipe was number 3. Much like Kane, great hand speed for a heavyweight too. Number 2, maybe a little controversial pick, but I got Francis because Francis was probably one of the most devastating hitters at his time. He also knocked out Stipe, and Stipe was at a higher level than he was when he fought John. And he knocked out Kane when we never saw Kane really fight again after that, I think. And I still think Kane, could have been really, good at that time. We won't know, but he just had that power. And I still think, I don't know if there's been an MMA heavyweight who has the kind of power in his peak than Francis did. And so for that, he's my number 2. Number 1 is Fedor because nobody has that kind of resume of being, unbeaten in the streak he was in Pride for so long. Just so dominant, so legendary with fights, against Krokop, Nogueira, and until he got to Strikeforce and kind of had a bit of a jinx there, with people like Radum and Dan Henderson. There wasn't anybody who could touch Fedor. And even towards the end of his career, still putting on entertaining fights, Would have loved if the UFC back in the day could have got Fedor and Brock Lesnar in a fight just because of where they were both at that time and what that would have looked like in terms of the spectacle. But obviously that never happened. So Fedor is my number 1. I'm assuming you have some of those guys.
I do. I have a few. So I'll do what you did in order. So number 4 for me, I have Francis Ngannou. Same reasons you said, just intimidation factor, most KO power ever in MMA for sure. My number 3 is going to be Fabricio Verdum. So one of the best submission artists of all time. Great off his back, which is incredibly rare for a heavyweight. Maybe him and like Frank Mir maybe are the only guys I can really think that are really dangerous off their back at that. So, and he beat both Kane and Fedor.
Yes.
In their primes. So, but with that being said, my number 2 is Cain Velasquez. So, obviously cardio, he revolutionized what heavyweights are expected to have cardio wise. So, and with his wrestling, he just ground people down. So, he beat some of the best guys ever too. So number 1, I'm with you. Got to be Fedor, just pure dominance. He legitimately set the standard for heavyweight MMA champions. So, we agree overall for the most part. I actually thought you were gonna have Mirko Krokop on your list. So
I would have thought about Krokop was one I thought about because of a lot of his, a couple other guys I thought about, Nogueira, and then Radum was probably the one I was closest to putting in because actually when I was going with my list too, I started thinking about that even before you said it. I'm like, oh yeah, he does hold a victory over Kane, and Radum. So we started talking about the Strikeforce. I'm like, oh yeah, but. I don't know. I'd still like my list, but yeah, there's a lot of fun arguments, and you even do have your arguments for guys like John Jones and Daniel Cormier too. I mean that might be looking at a top 10 here, but overall, I think we're on pretty much the same page. Hey guys, let us know. You get to us during the weekend whenever you see the show. I'd love to hear MMA heavyweights, Mount Rushmore for a lot of people, but. All right, let's get out of here. What do we got coming up?
All right, September 27th, UFC Fight Night, Olberg versus Reyes. That's 10 p.m. from Perth, Australia. And then October 4th, UFC 320, Ankalaev versus Pereira 2. That's Vegas, 10 p.m. pay-per-view. And then October 11th, UFC Fight Night, Alvarez versus Fiziev, 7 p.m. Rio de Janeiro.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining the Combatcast. We'll see you next week.